Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm trying to figure this out because it looks like I'm recording, but I'm just trying to figure out where it's recording to. Let's see.
Oh, it does say recording on there, but
Let's see. It's probably on my computer somewhere. Let's see. Here we go. I'm just letting everybody into the meeting here, guys. So you can feel free to talk if you want.
Thank you. Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. I wish I could have set it up to automatically let everybody in. There we go. I see Sherry is here now too. Let's see. Let's see, Jeremy. Hey, since it is after 10 o'clock, do we want to get started? What do you guys want to talk about?
I know we're waiting for one of my coworkers to get on.
Okay. I've got 16 people in here right now and nobody trying to get in at the moment. So
Okay.
let's see.
Okay, wait.
I know one thing I was interested is seeing what other districts are doing for finding students for next year. Like that, in my district, they've been so driven on trying to help this year's seniors, which is understandable, but there's pretty much been zero happening on the front of like testing kids for next year or anything. I'm just not getting the referrals.
At least in my district, we're not going to get referrals probably till August, September, because we don't even know what next year is going to look like yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't even get students to respond, much less get them to take a reading test or anything like that. So right now we're not doing anything for us for next year.
Yeah, we've talked about, we'll probably wait until the end of May before we really start interviewing kids.
Okay.
I would say in Oconomowoc, we're kind of in the same boat. We have a list of students that we've been generating that we think might qualify for next year, but no plan in place right now for testing them or anything for entry to the program.
Okay.
Well, I talked to my guidance counselors yesterday, and I may have fewer kids than normal just because my district is going to pass fail, and we're being very conscious about trying not to overwhelm kids with work. Like pretty much each department is sending out one assignment per week. So it's possible that some of the kids who may have ended up being credit deficient enough to qualify, if they do kind of the bare minimum of work, they may actually pull through enough credits that they can make it. So I'm kind of waiting to see what fall looks like. I might have kind of a light crew.
And I'm anticipating not getting as many fifth-year seniors as I normally would have, because our district's reducing the credit requirement for graduation this year to like 15, basically DPI's bare minimum for
Wow.
this year's seniors. So normally I have a decent amount of fifth years I take in, but I'm not expecting to have many of them.
We do have quite a few kids that are in my building already in other programs. I think I probably have almost 15 to 20 kids that'll be making their route into our program, just funneling from other programs in my building. So I plan to be testing those kids pretty soon.
How's everybody been with just kids reaching out to them, like your current students? Have you been having good luck getting kids to contact you, follow up with anything? Because that seems to be my biggest frustration, and it's not necessarily the kids that I was already having a tough time contacting. Surprisingly, it's some of the kids that I thought we had a pretty good thing going and a pretty good rapport. They've just kind of dropped off, and that's worrisome.
No, I would agree with that. I'm not getting response. I have still about, I think, 16 kids left, and I'd say a good 14 are avoiding me. So I don't know if they're just hoping to wait until, May 28th and then suddenly be like, okay, well, what do I need to do now? Like, well, I'm trying to tell them that that's not going to work. So I've been trying to send out videos and calls to parents, and most of the parents are saying things like, well, I just can't motivate him. He's not interested. He doesn't want to do anything, all that. So it's been incredibly frustrating. I hate this. I hate being home. This is not going to work with at-risk kids at home ever. As many of my kids,
Agreed.
as many of my kids come in and say things like, like, oh, can I just do this from home? This is proving that they can't do it from home, because
Right.
very few can, because they don't have anybody to hold them accountable at home. There's not the consistency. And so it's, parents are frustrated. I'm frustrated. And it's just, I really wish, if nothing else, we could have just gone back for 3 weeks, because that could have gotten the rest of them done pretty quickly, but it's just, this is going to be pulling hair until the end of the year, and just praying, that some of them just get motivated somewhere in May.
Yeah, strangely, I found a couple of mine that, frankly, I was worried weren't going to do too well, just because they were struggling academically with their teachers. Once they found out that all they had to, they didn't actually have to pass a test, all of a sudden they were willing to go through the competency work that we could provide them. So strangely, we had a couple that were on the bubble and the other way do well. But yeah, I've certainly had a few that we were fully counting on to get done, but haven't been making much progress at all. The other teachers working with some of our GEDO2 kids, because we had split them up into groups of 3 teachers, because we got to about 30 students in GEDO2 this year. Said contacting's been going all right, but work is slow.
I sent out a letter to my students to try and motivate them, because they weren't motivating, and basically said, the minute the testing centers open up, the accommodations I've made for you are off the table. So get it done before they open testing centers up. And then I kind of said, well, they could open up as soon as whatever, to try and get them to jump.
This is Sherry. Just so you know, Green Bay, Marinette, and Sturgeon Bay are opening test centers next week.
I think I saw Kenosha is as well. Which I'm guessing means Racine and Gateway and Racine and Walworth counties will as well. But
I have not heard that.
Yeah, I saw in the paper yesterday that Kenosha was planning to open up their test center.
It's only 10 at a time, and it's only GED and CPR testing for the northeast area.
So Sherry, how are things going at DPI? Are things a little crazy down there?
Yeah, very busy. The Challenge Academy students were all sent home, and so that's kind of going how you guys were talking. A lot of those kids were at risk before they even went there. And, to have them go back and try to stay drug-free and engaged has been a challenge. So trying to figure out that. A lot of things going on with GED testing. They're trying to come out with ways for students to be able to take the test at home through a process called OnView. However, because GEDO 2 students are generally minors under 18, they are hesitant to let 18 and under test at home because they have to turn on the camera and, anyways. But yeah, in a lot of districts, just trying to figure out what to do with all their kids and graduation requirements. The 118-15 contract students, they all had to go back to their district. We're not giving HSEDs here based on competency for students who are enrolled in a school district. So.
Sherry, how do you envision it going into next school year? Is there any talk down there at DPI about what things are looking like going into August, September?
No, so it's been interesting. I've been doing these town hall meetings weekly with GED testing, and this took them obviously by surprise. And so they're just spinning their wheels trying to get some testing on board with the OnView, which is the online testing, and they're doing a test pilot that runs through July. So then after that, they're going to open up to more testers, but some states obviously are going to be opening test centers by the time they get caught up with all that. I'm imagining that test centers are going to try to figure out a way to do testing while adhering to social distancing practices. So I think ultimately our GED Option 2 students will be okay. But it would be nice if districts, if we have another bout of this coronavirus in the fall or winter, if districts would relax some of those graduation requirements, kind of like what Adam was saying, not necessarily 15 credits, but maybe have some more flexibility.
Yeah. And one thing I saw in the Journal Times, our district hasn't actually communicated this to the staff yet, but the Journal Times reported it, that they were considering doing like a hybrid schedule possibly next year in racing. Like half the kids would come in one day, half the kids would come in the next, or mornings and afternoons every day, splitting them up, something along those lines. If we do have to do like an every other day model, how's that going to look as far as like the 15-hour requirements for attendance and stuff? Because kids would be expected to work from home on the days they're not in school.
Right. I mean, they would be able to do that. They would be expected to do that virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that the DPI superintendent has been very flexible with school districts and allowing them to meet those graduation requirements, and school boards have a lot of flexibility. So it would really be critical for everyone to talk to their school boards about what you're seeing with your at-risk students so that they can get a sense of what the struggle is and going forward. So I don't know, hopefully we'll all learn something from this, and it's just going to be one day at a time.
So Sherry, if the testing centers do open,
Yeah.
but our school district still does not allow us to take students out testing, would we continue with what we're doing now with the GED Readies?
That's a great question. That's a possibility. I would say that your district ultimately has the decision-making authority to decide that is a competency that they will accept. And I know at DPI we have been, again, very open-minded and flexible in this pandemic. So it's possible. I mean, obviously I'd like to get away from that, but if kids aren't allowed to test and GED testing is saying they won't let kids under 18 do the online testing, what are we supposed to do?
Right.
It's a little bit of a dilemma.
Because if our school is still doing remote learning, I guess I don't see them allowing us to take kids out to test.
Right. Yeah. And maybe once they get through with the pilot, they'll be able to look at, hey, could a teacher, somehow monitor students and have that online testing in a classroom environment or something like that. Also, maybe we could get creative with mobile testing sites. Come to a school or something.
Okay.
Sherry, I know in normal situations, in normal times when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, the FAQs state that that schools are supposed to transport kids to testing centers. But if a situation like Deb is talking about happened, could we allow our students to take themselves? Like, that might be kind of a bypass where if I can't take a student to the testing center, but their parent can, would that be allowed?
As long as your district would be okay with it, I think that we would be okay with that.
Okay. It wouldn't be my preference, but again,
Right.
these aren't really normal times, so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we have to accept the fact that, if we're trying to social distance, all of a sudden having people in a car together that aren't normally together would
Right.
not make sense. So, yeah.
Has there been any talk about potential changes to work requirements for next year if the virus is still an issue? I'm especially worried about kids who might be medically at risk or who live with people who are.
You mean the employability and the, yeah, we'll obviously look at that. It might be that we could replace it with something that they could do virtually, but we haven't had the opportunity to look at that yet. But I would imagine we'd want them to still do something to, whether that's, come up with, make sure they have a resume and in place and some other, I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I would have the same question. Erica and I are in the same district. Along with work hours, we also, require community service hours. So that would be, that's something that we've been waiving at the end of the year for students short on those hours because the places where we were going to volunteer, like the YMCA and St. Vincent de Paul and things like that, are obviously not open or taking volunteers. So going into the fall, what that might look like also.
Yeah. How many of you have Zello accounts?
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
I use that quite a bit.
Yeah. Because I think, if they're engaged that way, having some other things in place, I don't know. We're going to have to take it one day at a time, but those are good concerns. And there's only so much you can do virtually, and then that's assuming everyone has access. So do you have any kids that have told you that they do not have access?
We do in our district. We've basically tried to provide basically packets of the competency work, like printed off stuff, and just sent it out in the mail to them. That's part of what's kind of held up our district overall. Is we're estimating about 20% of our students district-wide don't have reliable access. Like, that's not the GEDO2 population, that's just overall. So given the size of our district, that's required a pretty big effort to mobilize printing packets and organizing pickups and drop-offs.
What district are you, Adam?
Oh, I'm from Racine.
Racine. Oh, yeah.
We had a pretty organized effort. I'm in West Dallas. We had a pretty organized effort where parents did a survey and kids could check Chromebook, and then we also provided students with a hotspot. So I had a couple students that would say, I don't have a device. I would just kind of refer them to our IT guy, and they would do drop-offs of a Chromebook and hotspot. So took a few days, but it would alleviate that issue, which was really, really helpful. In West
Yeah.
Dallas, I'm estimating, more than 20% would not have devices. So that has helped out tremendously. So I think we did a really good job with that.
I know in Madison, they're still doing those hotspot deliveries. So people are still learning and adjusting and responding to the needs.
I know in Waukesha, we have the Waukesha 1-to-1. So most of our kids had technology to start with. So we were kind of ahead of the curve. And then anybody that did not have it, again, Chromebooks were issued. So we've been doing live for like our option 2 students. We do live instruction at least once or twice a week. We are meeting with students individually through WebEx Teams and doing some instruction that way and trying to support them as best we can to get them to the finish line. I just listening to some of this, I feel like we had an upper hand on a pandemic because we were already into the technology world. So our transition has been smooth. I think our biggest hang up right now is just keeping our at-risk youth engaged. We are hunting them down. We are calling, we are nagging, we are doing everything we can to keep them engaged to finish the school year out. We even now offered to do drive-by graduation parades as students finish. The staff is lining up and
Oh, nice.
and driving by and honking the horn and doing whatever we can to celebrate them. Our social worker created it's called Mrs. Bentley's Quarantine Corner, and she starts something every week. So this week it's post a picture of yourself and what you're doing for fun during quarantine. So we get a lot of the kids, just if they're not doing their academics, they're still checking in on that quarantine corner so we know they're okay. And sometimes that's our biggest win, is just knowing they're okay.
Right. Wow.
I'm finding with my kids, I mean, some of it's just they're at risk and that hasn't changed. And in many cases, that's worse. But a lot of my students are now babysitting younger siblings. They're babysitting nieces and nephews. Some kids are working more because they're already working in like the grocery industry. So for my kids, not necessarily my option 2 kids, but some of my other kids, I've been having to really remind teachers, like, you can't require all your kids to log in for a Zoom at one time because they might not be home. They might be, I've got one girl where her mom sent her off to live with her sister so she could babysit her sister's kids because her sister's an essential worker. Like, that student doesn't have control over that. So,
Oh, wow. Right.
they're not all, some of my kids are sleeping till noon and binging on the Tiger King, but a lot of my kids don't have that luxury. So, it's that balance, right? It's trying to respect the fact that they've got complicated home lives, but also wanting to get them to the finish line.
Are you guys using like individual graduation plans to meet their needs and meeting with them then? Or I'm imagining that's happening, but anything to share that you've had success with?
We've got our graduation checklist. The principal and I sat down, did some revisions to what some of those requirements would be, waive some of the stuff. We've got a couple of kids that are now the sole breadwinner in the families, where the parents don't have a job, but the kid is still employed. And so some of the employment components that we were holding them accountable for, we're waiving for those type of kids. We are not waiving like the resume, cover letters, stuff like that. That all is getting done. But some of our other work, we're just saying you're meeting it through your job. We obviously then, 90% attendance, that's pretty hard to maintain right now. So we're just basically working off of a checklist, and each checklist now is a little bit different for each student. Depending upon what the family situation is, and still trying to hold the integrity of the program and that diploma. But it seems to be working. You know, I'm holding my breath for the finish line.
Yeah.
To see, but we are trying to accommodate as much as we can with the home lives.
I know someone today was talking to me about the at-risk reporting and how they try to send out letters to families over the like in late July, early August, but you know, with the way things are, they're going to hold off a little bit just to see what things look like, just because you know there could be a lot more people that fit that criteria come the fall. So just kind of be aware that you know there might be kids that weren't normally at risk that now, you know, because they've been having to stay at home with a dysfunctional family, or you know, all of a sudden their parents aren't working and where they had a normal life before. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects our numbers.
I know one of the things that has helped for us, and we have, you know, we have a team. We have a team of 4 people that help with GED, is basically telling the kids that they have to get on with somebody every day. And we've given them a time, and it's amazing that they're all getting on and they're all showing up. And one of the students said to me that he just kind of likes having me on there for an hour, and he really is working, and I'm not sometimes helping him that much, but he just likes the fact that, you know, there's contact with somebody.
Yeah.
So we've kind of divided them up between Robin and Colleen. They're on here too right now, where I'm at 1 o'clock every day. You know, one of our students has to go on, and one day it's with Colleen, one day it's with me. And it's amazing how they are showing up for that hour that we're kind of assigning them. And I think we've had, I don't know, we've had quite a few kids that have finished, and we do a little graduation ceremony on the computer, and we invite the principal, and we have these little bells we ring. So we've been doing those with the students on our Google Meet.
And that's really helped with our special education students. They're getting that solid one-on-one for an hour to work through whatever requirement they're working on at the time. And we've had some kids do more work now that we've been off than we did in the classroom, because there isn't distractions of the other classmates and what's going on in the building. And they can really just focus on the one teacher and the one thing they're working on at the time. So it's really helped some of those kids.
I like that idea.
Not to interrupt, I just got a Facebook message. I think someone's waiting to get let into the meeting.
I think that was Ray, but I let her in.
Oh, okay.
I know with our students, when I text to assign them up, I didn't say, hey, do you want to get on? I said, starting tomorrow, you'll be on at 1 o'clock every day with a different teacher. And they've kind of done it, rather than when you give them a choice, do you want to do this? We just say, you're going to do this, and they're doing it.
Cool.
I know at the beginning we talked a little bit about testing for new students. Has anybody figured out a way that they're doing that virtually right now? Or what are you thinking going into the fall for testing, placement testing for students? Has anybody done anything with that?
I don't know if this is okay or not, Sherry, but we've been talking with our principal about possibly using the GED Ready.
Well, yeah, I think you should do that. I was going to suggest it. Even GED testing has said that in light of TABE not necessarily being available, that GED Ready could be used. And I think that's, at least we know that's aligned with their goal of getting their credentials. So
a passing GED, like reading score, GED Ready reading score?
That's what we planned on using, the 145 on the language test.
On the language arts, okay.
You know, it's been, if I could just talk about this for a second. I thought it was interesting, you know, the number of kids I have this year. I mentioned this at the NARN conference too, the number of kids I have this year that were scoring lower on the TABE but are able to pass the GED. And it's the first time I've really seen that happen. It's like kids who are scoring, you know, like 6, 7, 8 on the TABE, but are still able to get a 150 even on the GED.
Well, is that
Randy, is that after you give them instruction that they're doing that?
Yes. Yeah. It's not as a placement test. Which
Okay.
is why, because I've tried to use it as a placement test, and I've seen kids who just didn't care when they took it, and they were getting in the 120s, I mean, which is kind of like just, I've gotten in the 120s just by guessing. So, I can't imagine, what they're doing, but for them to go and focus on something at home for 45 minutes and take a test without knowing why they're taking it or caring or whatever, I can't see them suddenly, those who are borderline being able to pass it, but I can see, some of our more gifted students, because it's crazy the number of kids I get that are pretty high end. Like I have a kid right now who had a 34 in the ACT.
Wow.
It's amazing how they can come in and just without even trying get 160s or whatever. So, but it's been interesting to see the amount of growth just with, I was going to ask people, what kind of content are you, what, are you giving any content practice, or are you just giving test taking practice right now?
Test taking.
I'm giving content practice through Edgenuity.
Through Edgenuity? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm doing it through Odysseyware primarily.
Through
I have
what?
less.
What are you using on Odysseyware?
Oh, Odyssey.
It has a built-in GED test prep course, so that's the main thing we're using.
Okay.
I don't necessarily love Odysseyware, so I've been supplementing it, but limited options, so that's been my primary source.
So you're using that for test prep, but not specific content.
Yeah, so we for our competency option, we've been using it as like a basically like a kind of as a competency curriculum these past weeks.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we used it as a test, basically just for test prep. But usually then it was only for people who said, like, I work better on a computer than I do with paper. So when we were actually meeting in school, I had more flexibility on that.
Because I'm finding that like I had a kid who was getting in the low 130s to mid 130s on a language arts test, but I did a face-to-face over Zoom here with him and just talked about how to take the test, and he ended up with a 154. So
Wow.
but I think it's just there are certain little things they're doing on these tests that they're just, like they're going right to the question and trying to scan back for the answer, even though they're not reading the thing first. But those little differences, I mean, it makes a huge difference as far as understanding what the question is asking. And so, I mean, I'm not having that happen with math. I just got to be clear. It's not happening with math. It's only happening in language arts, science, and social studies, where if I show them how to take the test, they're doing dramatically better. And, so it's just, that's where I'm seeing that big jump from the kids who are borderline do better. Because some of mine, I swear, I've tried to come up with a whole lot of different ways. We don't have any real online program for practice. We don't have Odysseyware or Edgenuity. So that's where I'm just like, okay, I'm just punting on that. I'm just going to show people how to take the test, and that's where I'm finally able to get them through. So
I feel like we've been pretty lucky this year with testing, because this all happened in March, and we had a lot of kids that were down to like maybe their last test already by that time. But I think this is going to be very difficult next year if we start the year virtually, and we've never had time face to face with these kids for the months like we had this year. So I'm really worried about next year.
Are you guys talking about starting the year virtually?
They really aren't saying no, but just my personal gut feeling, I worry a little bit about that, but no, they have not said anything at all.
I think we're talking about doing what somebody else said, where it's every other day we'll have kids in, possibly,
That might happen.
maybe.
it's been interesting.
We don't have any real clear direction other than they're planning for different phases of what might happen. I know that there's like 3 different plans out there of what school in the fall might look like. I think that with our programs, at least we could probably limit numbers or easily do the every other day. Right now we usually have up to 15 in the classroom for option 2, but I mean, we could easily say that was only going to be 10, or do 7 one day, 7 the next. I feel like in our programs, we can be pretty flexible with that. But it's all those extra requirements that would be waived or have to be looked at. I know that one of the other teachers I work with is kind of, because we have like a campus tour that's required, the community service and Capitol tour. So looking at trying to make those a virtual experience and what that looks like. It's not ideal, but something.
It's a good idea, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all unknown right now, so we just don't know what's going to be coming.
Sure is crazy.
Has anybody started any new students since all of this has happened when you've been at home, where you've like done paperwork in any sense for a new student and had to submit new forms?
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't had to submit any forms or anything. I've had students who tried to start, and you know, we did a virtual meeting and then I never heard from them again.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I've had that happen.
I mean, we've had some virtual intake meetings for e-learning kids in our building,
Okay.
and we've done that all just on Google Meet. And you know, when we do our graduation paperwork, Colleen is actually on right now for us for GED. She pulls up the paperwork online and she does the typing as a parent is there saying, yes, I give permission, and she'll type in, you know, that permission through video chat with the parent. And so that's how we've been handling paperwork.
Okay. Yeah.
I
We
know
haven't
that.
started any new students, but typically this is where we would start throughout May, starting our juniors to kind of just get them up and running for the fall. So that's why I was just wondering.
There was
I
an
think in my experience, because I'm a smaller district and I'm the only one, my principal works with me and she lets me use those first, well, traditionally she lets me use that first week and a half to meet individually with the students, those seniors that are entering the program, to start the paperwork and get a little more one-on-one interaction. So that's how we handle it. But I also have that luxury because I only have, you know, a handful of students in the GEDO program. So that's how we do it. I have the kids come in for an hour to 1 day a week. That first week, I sit down, I give them the tape or whatever, and discuss like their work and, you know, all the program requirements. So that's how we do it. But like I said, I'm a one-man show, so I have that luxury of doing it that way.
We've also started seniors in the fall like that, where we take the first couple of days. So that might be just the way we have to go for next year for sure. Yeah.
I know that a couple of schools contacted me about the schools that serve some of the jails. There's been a kind of an influx in enrollments of students who've gotten in trouble and ended up in jail. I don't know if anybody serves students in jails here, but
We don't in our district, but it's something we've talked about trying to do. I mean, this might be a bit of a tangent, but we just have to, if we were to do that, do we just have to make sure like testing is available within the jail, or?
well, right now a lot of the jails aren't even letting teachers come in there, and so it's a
Yeah.
huge issue because the jails are understaffed, and then they don't want, you know, people, you know, coming in, and so even if yeah, it's just not a good scenario.
Okay.
No, our jail yeah, you're right, because our jail teacher is not allowed into the jail right now. So she can only go like in the front door, but then they won't let her go beyond that. So sometimes she drops things off, and then the jail has to deliver it to the cell, and then they'll deliver it from the cell back to the teacher at the front door, but they won't let her go into the building.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have a brother-in-law who works for the prisons, not the jails, but similar. And I know, I mean, they're being ultra cautious with even the workers. Like everyone who works where he is gets their temperature checked when they walk in the door. Everybody wears a mask. So I would expect that those restrictions are going to stay for a while, just because, I mean, I've seen in the news about several prisons and jails being hotspots, just because you have, you know, all the inmates really crowded together. So they're doing, I think the smart ones are doing everything they can to avoid having extra people bring infection into the building. So I would expect to see that continue even in fall.
Yeah. It might be helpful for, and maybe you guys have another one set up, but it might be nice to maybe touch base again once, you know, we hear the next governor order that applies to schools, and see where everyone's at.
I think this worked pretty well, Adam, to put it up in here. You know, I think that it would allow everybody, and I'll have to change the settings so I can just let people in automatically next time. I don't know how, I've never hosted the meeting this way before. So I've only ever had to let in one person. So, so I mean, I think it was good just to have the link, and then people could just click on it and then join the meeting again. But you're right. I mean, after May, you know, we might be able to, with knowing more. Has there been any talk, by the way, about, because I've heard some places talk about, some states talk about starting school in the fall earlier. Has there been any discussion about that, Sherry?
I've not heard that. Nope.
Okay. All right.
Principal brought that up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something about coming back in August instead. I don't know where he got it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just praying that no matter what, I have 4 kids who only have to take one GED ready test, and if they pass it, they're done, but they're still avoiding me. So I'm just praying that they decide to step up and actually do it at some point.
Wow.
But I'm tired of texting them, and I feel like a stalker, like constantly calling them and texting them.
That's how I feel.
I'm like, I'm sorry guys, but what do you want me to do? I mean, they're like, well, we didn't know we were bothering you. What do you want me to do? I'm supposed to contact you, and you're not contacting me back. So what do you want me to do? so we'll see what happens. But I definitely think this is a good idea, Adam, and let's definitely do this again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for hosting a meeting for us. And
sure.
Yeah, thank you for organizing.
Yeah, I will go ahead and I'll figure out where it's. I think I found what this is being recorded on my computer, and once I have it, I'll upload it to YouTube and then just share the link right on this site, on this Facebook page. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.